My name is Scott Cooney. I started Clean Technica to promote clean energy and other sustainable alternatives, and for 13 years we've been moving markets. If we had a nickel for every time someone told us they bought their first EV, solar, e-bike, or fill in the blank clean energy solution, we'd be a cable TV channel by now. But we don't get those nickels. So unfortunately, we could use your help to reach a few more people. If just 1% of our audience chipped in a few bucks a month, we could hire dozens of great journalists and promote all sorts of climate solutions. It's easy. Just go to cleantechnica.com/support and sign up with a credit card in seconds. Cancel anytime. But we'll be sending out some cool perks too, so I think you'll want to stick around. With your support, we'll keep leading the charge. Thank you so much.
We're here for another episode of EV Obsession. Joe Boris, Zach Shahan from Clean Technica. We have a packed show. We were trying to focus these shows a little bit more so we can talk at length about stories, but we have some big stories, several big stories that we just have to get to today after a bit of a break. And yeah, let's jump into it with a really big story where they've sort of buried the lead, which is why we were laughing when we came on here, because we were trying to talk about it and then we were realizing that they had buried the lead. Let's start with Joe. Explain, what this is, who this is coming from.
So Cox Automotive, they are the software platform providers for the North American auto industry. If you've worked in a car dealership, you've probably used CDK, you've probably used DriveX, you've probably used Lightspeed, which is a different version of CDK for power sports motorcycles and things like that. You've gone to Manheim Auction to buy vehicles. You have interacted with Cox Automotive probably for many years, so you know exactly who these guys are.
Basically all the automotive trends you were saying.
Yeah, every automotive trend you read about, whether it's sales numbers, whether it's days on the lot, whether it's average transaction price, all of that is coming from Cox Automotive. So when you read about that, you read about these statistics on social media or whatever else, almost all that information comes from Cox. Now, as they start looking at, the end of year vehicle prices, there's a very interesting observation that they make towards the bottom of this article. And that is that EVs are rapidly approaching price parity with comparable internal combustion vehicles. I'm going to read this straight from the source because there's no better way to say it. In recent months, price parity between EVs and ICE has almost seemed possible, added Stephanie Valdez-Streety, Director of Strategic Planning at Cox Automotive. It is a complicated measure with plenty of variables, but newer products and higher discounts have brought down average EV prices even before potential tax incentives. A year ago, the EV premium was more than 30%. Today, it is less than 10%. That is huge news.
Yes, huge. So
huge.
We've all talked about this for years. You have expected lower costs of ownership, lower costs of operation, I should say, from electric vehicles. So we've tried to make the case many times, and many buyers make the case to tell them, to convince themselves to go electric, that in the long run, it will be cheaper to own an electric vehicle. But it's almost never cheaper upfront to get an electric vehicle than a comparable, or what we can say is comparable, fossil fuel powered vehicle of same size, same class. So the point a lot of people make just simply is, okay, when we hit price parity, it would just make way more financial sense to get the EV. But it's not really just about when you hit price parity. I mean, for normal people, they'll look at the price and be like, oh, this is the same price, but I'll save money from not buying gas and going to do oil changes. But when you're getting close, like that should already be the clincher, right? I mean, when you're a couple percent higher, then you can look at it and be like, well, it's a little bit more, but I'm going to save that money in a year or in 2 years.
Here's the thing. Americans don't buy, whether it's new cars, whether it's the typical consumer, American consumer doesn't buy things based on financial efficiency, right? People don't make good financial decisions. Americans buy for low use cases, right? There might be a scenario where I'm hosting a Super Bowl party and I need a 70-inch television. No, that's never going to happen. There may be a scenario where my field is overrun by 50 feral hogs and I need an AR-15. It's never going to happen. This is what Americans buy for. That one day out of the year that you might go to IKEA justifies in their mind the 364 days a year where all they're towing in the back of their pickup truck is smells, right? Absolutely nothing. So I've never thought that was a good statistic. I've never thought that was something that should even be mentioned in a conversion conversation of someone getting to EVs. A little different with fleets because fleets are dollars and cents, but in consumers, nobody cares. Here's the part that people are going to care about. Once price parity starts to become a reality, and I think we're almost there if we're not there already, you're going to start to see that it's going to become a more mainstream product. And what do I mean by that? It's easier for GM, Ford, Stellantis, Volkswagen to build vehicles off an electric platform. It's a streamlined assembly. Not quite yet. The supply chain still isn't there. There's still materials there. There's still a learning curve. But we can all agree that it's going to be easier and less labor intensive to build on an EV skateboard than it currently is on a internal combustion platform, which is the whole secret sauce of how Tesla can churn these things out so quickly. And you're going to start to see the legacy car makers figure that out because engineering is engineering and nobody has a unique license on engineering principles and, you know, laws of physics. So as that starts to take place, these companies will then be incentivized through economies of scale and reduced production hours, et cetera, to start marketing and prioritizing the marketing and sales of electric vehicles, which means that the price of internal combustion vehicles will be driven upward. They will be driven upward because the manufacturers would rather spend less money to deliver a vehicle to you and charge you a premium price for it. Eventually, in the same way that smartphones used to be more expensive than flip phones, it is going to become very difficult to be able to find and buy an internal combustion vehicle. And they're going to start to have price premiums. I was looking the other day for a flip phone for my 10-year-old, and like, they're not out there. And when you do finally find one, it's not price competitive to a smartphone. It doesn't really make sense to buy her one unless you're like actively seeking that service. So the same thing's going to happen with EVs. In about 5 or 10 years, we're not going to need regulations to force us to buy EVs. They're going to be the only option.
Yeah. So I think there's two kinds of people in the world: people who love spreadsheets and people who hate them. And there are a lot of
nobody hates spreadsheets. They're amazing.
Similar to like people who like math, people who don't math do, and don't English do. So I think, you know, there's always been a market for those total cost of ownership spreadsheets, analyses, and of course, a lot of engineers have been early EV adopters. They're spreadsheet people, like by definition. So there's been a lot of, I've met people who are like who use our total cost of ownership analyses to come to a decision to buy a Tesla or different EVs. Most normal people, like the average person, does not want to touch a spreadsheet, does not want to do math, and does not want to look beyond the purchase price. And if you start trying to explain something like this, is like quickly like glazed eyes, let's change the subject, you've lost me at it's not just about the purchase price or whatever. So it's just critical. It's just critical. And as this is just, I can't believe this is the last line of their article, their press release. Like the last line, the biggest line, like the whole rest of the article is interesting about, average price trends and whatnot.
Right.
But like,
keep in mind who it is, but keep in mind who their customers are. Their customers are the most backwards thinking, absolutely entrenched, heels dug into the way things are and have always been car dealers. There is like absolutely no one in this world who would be more upset by this news than, some podunk rural car dealer in the middle of flyover Oklahoma. And he's going to get this from a company that he pays thousands of dollars a month to. They don't want to upset that guy. So they're going to figure, well, he can't read that well anyway. He's not going to make it to the end of this article. And they just let it go.
Stephanie's like, we have to say this. And it's like, okay, we'll just put it, we'll just put it at the very end.
I know.
this is just a big deal. So we'll see how things change, but for the time being, this is a sign of transformation. So
Yes.
keep your eyes out. One of us, I would like to write the article, but Joey, actually, we can both write articles about it. I don't know.
You got it, baby. Don't even worry about it.
I would love to write about this today because this is like one of the most exciting things I've seen in a long time. So, Joe, thanks for finding it. Probably finding it from your old dealer roots. Look at that.
I know. It's
It
like
makes
one
you
of those
special.
things where you're a professional at something.
Yeah, this is one of many things that make you special.
Exactly.
So actually, I would jump into some other. Yeah, we're gonna skip around today because I think we have to jump into this one. You started talking about it, and I think it is the best next story to go to, which is only 10 electric car models will qualify for the full federal EV tax credit next year because of changes in battery content requirements. And it's a big, like, this is so frustrating because first of all, the Biden administration has done a lot to improve
Definitely
EV
done a lot.
adoption and to what's it called? Not to onshore manufacturing, onshore blue collar jobs, reshore, I should say, because we offshored for decades and no administration has done anything close to what the Biden administration has done for reshoring manufacturing jobs. And this is a big, big, big part of it. So we've got battery factories going up, like tons of them in the US now because of this.
That's right.
We've got the whole automotive industry shifting. We've got Europe completely responding to the US and being like, oh, we're getting left behind by the US as well now, not just China. Crapola, what are we going to do? Because everyone's like, oh, well, we'll build our battery factories in the US because we need to. So it's a great thing long term. In the short term, it hurts our options. Like these are the 10 EVs: the Chevy Bolt, the Chevy Equinox, the Ford F-150 Lightning, the Tesla Model 3 Performance, the Tesla Model Y Performance, not the cheap ones, the most expensive ones, the Chevy Silverado EV, Pacifica plug-in hybrid, which some people will roast us for including, the Blazer EV, the Lyric. I saw a Lyric the other day. It wasn't as ugly in person as I expected.
No, they look nice, don't they?
Yeah, I was like, oh, that just looks like a normal. I was like, that's a Lyric. It doesn't stand out so much. And the Tesla Model X. So this is not a great list. And I just put, for comparison, I want to put here, like this is my spreadsheet for US EV sales, going back to 2018, where I put my quarterly numbers. I need to fill it out a little bit more on the bottom here, but you can see a lot of models. Like there's a lot of models on the US market now. Mm-hmm. We have some serious variety for once. Like this was like 7 vehicles long not long ago. So we have a lot of options, and it's and it's not, there's not a lot here. So, and really, if you think about the mass market vehicles on the US market, the Chevy Bolt is one, the Lightning is one, the Tesla Model 3 and Model Y, but not the performance trims, the long range and standard range trims, and they're not included here. The Mustang Mach-E not included here. The Volkswagen ID4 not included here. The Chevy, some of the Audis not included here. So the BMW iX not included here. So we've got like, look at the Mustang Mach-E. This is the third quarter, 15,000 sales, not included. So this is like the Kia EV6, Hyundai Ioniq 5. A lot of popular EVs, a lot of the best EVs are not going to qualify for the full tax credit. So that's really frustrating and disappointing. These are supposed to qualify for partial. Again, even this list is minimal. Oh, we forgot even a Rivian. Yeah. But I'm not the Mustang Mach-E eligibility is a little unclear. But yeah, this is a big hit. So the one positive thing we can say, and then I'll pass it over to you, without incentives, automakers and dealers are incentivized to lower the price more. So with the $7,500 tax credit, they can be like, oh, it's this much more, but it's $8,000 more, but you can get a $7,500 tax credit. So it's really, that affects the price that you see, the upfront price that we just talked about. So on the one hand, it can be positive if they don't. I remember Jigger Shaw, who founded Sun Edison, and he now is a top guy at the U.S. Department of Energy. He made this point years ago in an article he wrote for Clean Technica, where it's like he didn't want subsidies because they inflated the price of solar panels, and
Right.
and it's like, well, that makes sense, but they still help overall. But in the case of the auto market, you have to wonder how much like higher prices with incentives is a negative compared to lower prices without incentives, because then people are like, see, oh, those are similar. So I don't know. I'm rambling now, but in relation to this as well, like, what do you want to say about the tax credit?
Look, the tax credit has always been a little bit sketchy because in order to take full advantage of it, you had to have a $7,500 tax liability, which most Americans, just by the numbers, do not have. So this ability now to apply it as a down payment to an electric vehicle, even if it's only 10, is still radically different from what we had before. It is much more accessible now. A lot more people, middle and lower income families, are going to be able to take full advantage of it. I'm looking at you, Chrysler Pacifica and Chevy Blazer. That is going to make these vehicles much more accessible to a mainstream audience who are going to be able to take full advantage of it. And I think this is, even though we're making this argument, we're sitting here saying, oh, it's only 10 vehicles. For a lot of people who are going to be getting this incentive, it's 10 vehicles that last year they would not have been able to get anything for because they didn't have a $7,500 tax liability.
They also shouldn't be buying these vehicles except for the Chevy Bolt.
That's probably true. But one thing that we know about Americans is we love our cars. People will stop going out to dinner. People will stop paying on credit cards. People will stop paying their student loans to drive a new car because America is weird.
But there's also hope that this will be a lot better in a year.
Yeah, once you start seeing more manufacturing come online, and especially more manufacturing in the US, you've got Toyota doubling down on battery manufacturing here. You've got Tesla claiming they're going to expand North American manufacturing. I think you're going to see a lot more models that are going to qualify. Plus, we'll have more models that will qualify. You know, especially if we start talking about from the legacy brands like Ford and GM, which may or may not be a good segue into this one.
Yeah. So, this one. This is
Ford,
we have a couple of
Ford.
not fun stories here today. This is one.
Oh, let me handle this one because I'll make this fun.
Okay. Well, I wrote about it. You can read my article about it. But basically, I just laid out there's different reasons, macro reasons, economics wise, interest rates, medium macro, like semi macro, like just competition in the truck market reasons, like again, the upfront purchase price, truck buyers being more conservative, not being as eager to go to electric, the fact that if you actually want to tow or haul something with the F-150 Lightning, you're not going to get that far, and the charging network is not superb. And then just it's just not been great. So the final numbers so far in this year, like it's on track to sell about 15,000 units this year. The production capacity is supposed to was supposed to go up to 150,000, 10 times more. If you just multiplied the November total, which was quite high, which we raved about, by 12 months, you'd be at about 50,000 units. So even if you just go on the best month recently, the November total, and you get to 50,000 a year, that's a third of the 150,000 capacity. So the news that Ford is cutting production capacity in half, I mean, not cutting it in half, but cutting the plans in half, big difference, and planning to just have a production capacity of 75,000 makes sense based on recent months. But there are reasons to be potentially optimistic that could change. So I'll let you talk about some first, and then I have one.
Yeah, I just think honestly on this one, I don't trust Ford's marketing and comms people. And I'm not saying that they're trying to lie to us. I'm not saying that they're trying to manipulate us. I'm not saying that they're incompetent. I'm not saying any of those things. Basically, Ford understands that Jim Farley, their CEO, Osborne their existing F-150 Lightning vehicle. They absolutely understand that there's a ton of people out there who are interested in F-150 Lightning, but they have heard the comments of Ford's own CEO saying that charging these is a nightmare, complaining about their practicality on a road trip. When your own CEO comes out and starts saying bad things about your flagship product, your most visible product offering, that's not good strategy. I'm sure he got his wrist slapped by the board of directors, and they are now saying, look, we need to fast track NACS compatibility. That's supposed to be coming in model year 2025. So they're going to slow down production, which they already know demand is waning for these because people are waiting for 2025. We've talked about that several times. They're going to slow down production. They're going to fast track the 2025 model year vehicle so that they can get these things on the Tesla supercharger network. That's what this is. And they're painting it in so many other different ways, not only to appease their dealers who, frankly, they screwed when they, had their CEO come online and complain about EV charging, but to basically take attention away from that and deflect speculation about the supercharger port coming to this vehicle. I don't buy this at all. They can't go from a record month to all of a sudden there's no demand, especially when there's still waiting lists to get these through Ford Pro. The work versions, the work truck versions, the lower end product versions of these are still in high demand. Are the King Ranch versions and the XLT Lariat $120,000 pickup selling? No, but the internal combustion version of those aren't selling either. There's 100 to 120 day supply of those already out in the dealer world. And I know that because I read Cox Automotive's reports.
Well, I got a question for you, but first, you wrote about Jim Farley osborning the whole electric truck market with that announcement. But I thought my memory was that the 2024 models will be able to get an adapter to use superchargers. Maybe 2025 is built in, but 2024 should get an adapter. Yeah, I can't look it up while sharing the screen, but yeah, check that out. So potentially that could help a lot, and maybe that's why. Like, what are the models? It's too early for them to be 2024 models in November. I mean, I know they start selling next year.
Oh no, 2024 models are out. It'll be
no, they are. So they are selling.
Yeah.
So maybe that bump in November.
Yeah, there is no current adapter. There may be an adapter in calendar year 2024 that will allow them to connect to a supercharger.
So that's how I understood. So maybe you're getting a bounce in sales because people are like, okay, now I can get a 2024 model year Lightning that should have an adapter eventually. And theoretically, like step one, adapter comes out, people find out they can supercharge the Lightning. Boom, sales jump. Word of mouth goes, sales rise. 2025 model comes out, built-in supercharging compatibility. Boom, sales jump. So theoretically, you can see a boom, boom, boom kind of rise in sales and demand. And also the thing I was going to say, which this is obvious. So the Tesla Cybertruck finally got delivered for more expensive and less range than initially promised. So that's a big hit. It's not just more expensive. It's not just less range. It's more expensive and less range, which just puts it basically on par with the Lightning. The Cybertruck still wins on power. The Cybertruck still wins in some ways for some people, but other people see it as a refrigerator and they don't want it. And now that they can say, oh, the Lightning is just as good and it's the kind of truck I prefer, there could be a lot of pent up demand there that's really ready to jet to the Lightning.
Yeah.
So it's a little disappointing that they're making this announcement because that implies that there hasn't been the sign of that, but it also might have been something that was already in the works before and they didn't realize what would happen?
I don't think that's related. And here's why. Ford's customers are not individuals. Ford does not sell cars to consumers. They don't. Ford sells cars to dealers. Their customers are dealers. The people they need to keep happy are their dealers. Right now, what they are getting from their dealers is two things. Number one, the dealers do not trust Ford. Ford is the least trusted OEM among all dealers. That is a verifiable fact. That is
Yikes.
self-reported survey. The
Wow.
typical Ford dealer or the typical dealer group trusts Ford to act in their best interests less than any other OEM. So that's number one. Number two, Ford's dealers were forced by the parent company to invest hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars into their existing dealer infrastructure to support F-150 Lightnings and Ford Mustang Mach-E's, and to a lesser extent, the e-Transit vans and things like that. Now, when Ford made this announcement about
To support CCS charging.
Correct. When Ford made this announcement for the superchargers, what they effectively did was punish the good dealers who jumped on the bandwagon and said, yes, Ford, we'll do what you want. We're going to help push this forward. They punished them and they effectively rewarded the people who dragged their feet and said, we're not going to do anything. Because those people,
foot draggers are going to keep dragging their feet. It's not like
the
they're going to
foot
be like,
draggers are going to, exactly right. You're jumping ahead. You get
Sorry.
what I'm about to say. No, you get it. That's
just
a good
wanted to-
thing.
I thought you might move to something else, and
No.
highlight
the foot draggers
that the ones who were actually eager to jump in have now been soured to everything Ford is doing on EVs, and the ones who were not eager to jump in are still not eager to jump in because they're just not eager to jump in.
Exactly, and they do not want to have to, in addition to have to stomach this bill for EV infrastructure, they do not want to have to reduce and discount the price, the selling price of the Lightnings and Mach-E Mustangs that they already have sitting on their lots. So Ford is listening to them. Ford is choking off supply so that demand can pick up again. The Ford dealers can continue to get full price, if not mark it up a little bit. And now that they're saying, hey, if you want one of these things, you have to buy one of these because you might not be able to get one until 2025. That is going to help Ford's dealers who are Ford's customers. This is, once again, completely to appease the dealers. You got to read between the lines. Nothing that they are citing here makes any sense. The only thing that makes sense is we have to choke off demand so that the dealers who are stuck with some of these things can continue to get high prices until they move these off the lot, and then we'll be able to roll out the new one that has supercharger access.
Yeah,
that makes a ton of business sense. This does not.
Yeah, well, so my question was jumping off of one of your statements earlier, and also the clear fact that the dealer is the buyer, the first buyer, the buyer from Ford. So you mentioned about the lower price options being in high demand but not great supply, and the expensive $120,000 versions, maybe not selling as well. My question from that, when you said that, was how much were dealers ordering the expensive higher trims just looking to make a killing on the profits versus ordering the lower cost options that would potentially sell in higher volumes? How much was that happening, or how much do you know if that was happening or not? And how much how much is that a challenge for selling these in higher volumes, like dealers deciding whether or not to order the higher trim options versus the kind of more mass market options?
Well, I think initially there was a sense, especially among car dealers who don't understand EV buyers, that, well, Teslas are $100,000 vehicles and people are buying them because they're electric. They don't understand branding. They don't understand the culture. They don't understand the appeal of the tech. They don't understand the buyer. And it's very similar to like in the early 2000s when, Mac started really gaining ground because of Sex and the City and everybody wanted to be a cool, cute single girl and have a MacBook, right? The way that Dell and Gateway and HP responded to that was by slashing prices and making their products less expensive, less expensive, less expensive. They didn't understand the cultural shift that was driving Mac sales. The iPod was part of it. There was a ton of it that was part of it. Ford dealers and many legacy automakers fall into this same trap of people buy Teslas because they're electric. Not true. Most people, especially now that we're past the early adopter stage, most people are buying Teslas because they're Teslas. Most people are buying Teslas because they're cool. They say something politically. They say that you're making good money. They have all kinds of cultural connotations, right? The cynical belief that people will pay a significant premium to have something that is electric because it is electric is what bit these dealers in the behind. There ended up being a ton of fleets, a ton of municipalities who wanted to get their hands on an electric vehicle. They were not going to buy the premium version. They would rather wait it out for the work truck version. And these vehicles that were bought and purchased by dealers, ordered by dealers, and then put on the market with $20,000 to $30,000 markups did not sell. The problem here
well,
is
and also,
not. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, from that time, I mean, this was part of the issue. We were coming out of the COVID lockdown, economic shutdown era, and people were so eager to get their vehicles. And there was such a backlog, such a high demand. The market was inflated with all the free money that was getting passed out. And these vehicles were, I mean, people were willing to spend a fortune to buy any new car, especially any new EV, whether that's Tesla, Ford Lightning, or Ford Mustang Mach-E. So dealers, it seems to me, got a little bit like, oh, these things will sell for a fortune. Just order the expensive ones, you make more money. And like not realizing, like most of us, oh, the economy is going to turn around. Obviously, we're not going to have like everyone's got limitless money for
Forever.
Yeah. So I don't know. So that's
there's another thing here that I really want to say before we go. The other problem is these manufacturers, including Tesla, didn't understand that people were reserving vehicles and putting in orders that they had no intention of fulfilling.
Oh, 100%. I don't know how many people, I know people who have reservations in for the Cybertruck, the Lightning, the Rivian, the Luce, like there's people who put down reservations for like every potential EV they might want to buy.
That's right.
And then, they'll cancel all the ones that they decide not to go with. And like, that's fine. I mean, from consumer side, that's fine. But from the seller side, like, yeah, I agree. I don't think it's something, and it's not even something I thought about until you brought it up, that, oh yeah, this probably really messed with companies' expectations for what they were going to sell. I mean, I was thinking about it with regard to Tesla, but I don't think about it with regard to Ford or others so much, because I didn't really think so much about that being inflated for all the brands. So
yeah, it's 100% inflated for all the brands. And I think the legacy brands were much more vulnerable to the havoc that was wreaked upon them by that shift of order placement, because
they're not used to it.
They're not used to it.
They have a system they're used to for decades.
Right. And if
you
put
throw
in
a
an
wrench,
order, exactly. You get it perfectly. So that's what's going on with this. I don't think it has anything to do with what Comms is talking about. I think this is a way to appease dealers. We can move on. This is fine.
Yeah. And I just, the last thing on that supercharging, like, I guess the point you made earlier, like people don't know what's, there's still a lack of clarity on what's going to happen. And when you talk about the plans for CCS changing, like the plan right now is you're going to get a supercharger adapter soon, but nobody can even consumers can't necessarily like count on, they like, I mean, between Jim Farley and Elon Musk, like anyone can flip a switch on what their decision on this is and no one will be surprised. Like, oh yeah, that's just those CEOs again.
That's it.
So I think there's probably still a lot of limited demand as people wait to see the adapter actually come out, the truck actually work at a supercharger, people actually using it to go on road trips. So I think that's something that's probably still more limited than and like I said, it's 2023. Maybe a lot of people are still like waiting until 2024 calendar year hits before they think they can get a truck that will have an adapter. But yeah, let's move on. We don't need to talk about this, but this was related to it. This was just me 5 days ago highlighting how Ford EV sales were up 43%. They were doing well. And
they are doing well.
Yeah, in that regard, there's also this story of, we've talked about the hype about EV demand not being as much as expected is a bit over the top. And this recent report from Bloomberg New Energy Finance, the Zero Emission Vehicles Fact Book, shows again that like every single year they and others underestimate EV sales growth. Now they look good in this comparison. They're like, oh look, we estimated that they would be higher, but they're even higher than we estimated. But look at everyone who estimated they'd be lower. But yeah, look at who these people are: OPEC, BP, Exxon. Like,
but I think
you want to see the graph with Clean Technica readers, you're going to look real pessimistic, BNEF.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say, was like, when you look at something, any kind of EV or environmental projection from BP or Exxon or OPEC, but OPEC is lying. OPEC and BP are lying. OPEC and BP and Exxon are lying.
Thanks. Disclosure, this is Joe Bors's personal opinion. Entertainment purposes only.
I'm going to edit this all out, so it's just your head. It's just your head frozen like this.
No, it's just, this has been a joke for years here at Clean Technica. Like, readers love it. BNEF and others having to adjust their forecast because they were way off. They were not realizing the trend. Even readers on this one, point out again, like, they're looking at linear growth. Like, they still don't get it. They're still not paying attention. BNEF, they are in a certain situation. They're trying to look responsible and moderate, and they're appealing to clients who they don't want to look too radical for. Like, this is the case. I know this. I'm not going to talk more about it, but that's what I learned some years ago at a conference that I was co-hosting and in Amsterdam. And they really, they toe the line between being the optimists in the serious industry circles of the auto and oil industry and sort of Wall Street, and like being between them and like Tony Seba or much of the Clean Technica readership. But the point is, EV sales are still growing faster than expected. Demand is not lower than expected on the whole, for the most part. So good signs. That drop in Germany is because of its incentives changes. So it's just but yeah, you just have a lot of good charts on the growing EV sales market, the fleet, and we've got other stories on the degree to which this has reduced oil demand, cut oil demand. There's an interesting note from a reader here. We have 139 comments on this, 140 comments on this article, so I'm not going to find it. But if I remember it well, he was saying that OPEC or Saudi, I'm butchering it, they cut their estimated production like sort of after the fact. It seems like they cut it by 2 million barrels a day after not selling 2 million barrels a day. So it's kind of like they might even be drinking their own Kool-Aid and not realizing how fast this is happening, and then having to adjust their forecasts like on the fly or after the fact, because they're not realizing how much they're going to get hit with oil reductions from growing EV sales. And I think one of the most fun things, which I think we talked about already, was the leading contributor to reduced oil demand is not electric cars in this case. It's not electric buses. It's electric two-wheelers and three-wheelers. Did we talk about that last week?
No.
So Joe, take it away. This is your beat. This is your Can you believe it? That's the yellow bar here. These are the biggest drivers of oil reduction globally from the electric transport sector.
we have seen that. I mean,
All right,
there was
I
a
lost
great
your sound a
article.
bit. You're very quiet. Where's your mic?
It's right here.
Okay.
We've talked about this a little bit. There was a great article on Jalopnik, which is used to be a great site and is still a good
They're
site.
clever. They're funny.
They're all right. But regardless of that, the house that Ray Wirt has built is still pretty funny. They still have a lot going for them. And they recently had an article where they said, I bought an e-bike and it's become my whole personality. And they have it's such a great headline that I bought an e-bike and it's become my whole personality. Like, and they were talking about how trips that they never would have thought to take on a bicycle, they love taking on an e-bike. And now they have become that person who looks for ways to take their e-bike instead of their car. And they are not known for being an environmentally conscious website, but that one person who eliminated something like 50 short car trips in the course of 2 months made a tremendous contribution to carbon efficiency and carbon emissions reduction just by themselves. Because when you replace these little 2 and 3 mile long car trips with an e-bike, you're basically removing the least efficient, most polluting kind of trip you can make. So head on over to the Clean Technica Holiday Gift Guide. There's lots of great e-bikes there from Lectric and other fun stuff there as well, which I think is what Zachary's doing here.
Yeah, well, I was just, because as you were talking, I was thinking about how I see people around town, like all different ages and types of people, it looks like, who are biking with like Aventon, Lectric, and Hey Bike bikes, which we've done sponsorships with Aventon, Lectric. I'm not sure about Hey Bike, I think. And I see them and I'm like, oh, look, that's that bike. This is the company that we work with, that sponsors some stuff, articles, podcasts, the gift guide. And it's just like, wow, look, there's a lot of people, normal people actually out there buying these and seemingly like using them instead of cars. And I'm like, this is exciting. In hot Florida, in retirement town Florida, like this is happening. And it's cool. It's awesome. It's like a big fun trend that I have to say I didn't have great faith in. Like I was like, oh yeah, it's a great idea and concept, but who's going to actually do it? Other than young 20-year-olds and whatnot in college and in cities. But it's happening. But the biggest driver of this is Asian markets, where a lot of electric scooters, electric three-wheelers are used. Scooters and three-wheelers are used, and they used to be very polluting, and now they're more and more, they're electric. There are millions of electric two-wheelers and three-wheelers getting sold in India and Malaysia, different markets, other Vietnam. So this is not driven by the Floridians who have switched to an e-bike or the Jalopnik riders, but it also shows how much that extends to subcultures you wouldn't expect. But yeah, I mean, this is Joe, this has been your market, like the scooter market, since you were like a teenager, right? Like this is your world.
I mean, scooter is a different world, right? Like, because we used to have the GoPeds when I was a kid, and they were internal combustion, 2-stroke, horribly polluting vehicles. We rode them all over Florida. But recently switching over those to electric has been significantly better. And, it's just better. That's all it is. And again, I think the point of e-bikes is not necessarily to replace human powered bicycles. I've been putting less miles on my e-bike in the last couple of months and more on a traditional human powered bicycle, just because I'm
trying to get real exercise.
No, I don't think it's that. I don't think it's that. I mean, there's part of it, but I think it's sort of like a bicycle. If you have enough of them and you've experienced enough of them, they have different personalities.
Okay.
And it just feels like the regular bike is a lot less work. I just take it off the rack and go. I don't have to check the battery, unplug it, do the thing.
Yeah.
And and for, for Oak Park, which is basically 2 miles by 4 miles, it's not an issue. I will take the e-bike out when, I've got the kids on the back or I'm going grocery shopping or something. My new thing is taking it to the farmer's market, which I can't do now because it's too cold. They don't have it in the winter, but that was a great ride.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
We've
that's just what
defaulted
it's
the e-bikes, but I love the analog, the old school. I love the Dutch, like, the Dutch bike. There's just old school kind of. That's what I biked with in college, and
Yeah.
and then in the Netherlands, I lived there for 5 months. I biked, and there's nothing that beats that. Like the simplicity of chilling and riding on an old normal analog bike. But yeah, let's move on. So we also have some research from car. It's like they're trying to sell car insurance in Australia. This company or something.
All right, cool.
Compare the market AU.
Australians need car insurance.
Yeah, but they sent us this thing again where the what they highlighted in the email was like buried on the bottom of the story or in the middle of the story in this case, I think. But they highlighted that Tesla had become the most searched car brand in the US, passing up Ford. So it's it's Tesla and then Ford. Oh, there's no chart on it. Yeah. So these are all global charts than what's in the article. But it's like it's a big shift in the US market that Tesla became number one. Globally, what's happened, Toyota is still number one, but Tesla shot up. So Toyota, instead of Toyota, BMW, Mercedes, as it's been since almost since they started doing this research, it's now this year Toyota, Tesla, BMW, Mercedes got knocked down to fifth. And Tesla just shot up from not even being on the chart, like not being the number one most searched car brand in any market last year, to being number two. So the number one in 29 markets in the world. So Toyota went from being number one in 69 countries to number one in 64 countries, just dropping 5 countries. But Tesla shot up to being number one in 29 countries. And it's you can see the different graph here, similar kind of the same deal. So it's just showing how much it's grown in popularity. One thing to note, this research was done after the Cybertruck delivery event, so it does capture like all the people searching Tesla because of the Cybertruck, which could be more of a like, wow, you got to see this, then, oh, let's buy this vehicle kind of search. Mm-hmm. So it might be skewed by the Cybertruck delivery event. Fans might say that's the future. Come on, baby. The people are gonna want this Cybertruck more and more as it's on the road. But that's the story with the sort of global interest in these auto brands. Looking at Google search data, and just related to that, Tesla Giga Shanghai hit a new production record last month. Produced more vehicles than they ever have, 90,802 Model 3 and Model Y vehicles. And it seems the target is still 1.8 million vehicle sales in 2023 for Tesla globally, which will require a big bump in the last quarter, but that's sort of what you come to expect from Tesla. So, that's it. Any comments on the, I can switch to the first article.
Just real quick, do you think we're going to see...
Mike.
I don't understand what's wrong with the mic. It's like
you keep putting it
not
down.
Picking it up. Do you think we're going to see the same kind of bump at the end of Q4 from Tesla that we've historically seen this year?
Sales bump?
Yeah. Delivery.
Yeah, I just every time I think, oh, maybe not, they deliver. Like last quarter was huge. I've gotten a few emails about them trying to push me into a Tesla. Like I already have a Tesla, trying to get me to buy a new Tesla, because of being on the Cybertruck reservation list. And just, so it's clear that they're doing an end of year push, but they always do an end of quarter push. So it's like, I can't say it's like a concerning yellow flag relief for me, because they always push volume at the end. So I'm cautious, but I think it will be a record-shattering month and quarter. And I wouldn't bet against them hitting 1.8 million, but I also wouldn't be surprised if they're a bit below that. Like, because they're not quite on track for that. I mean, they might be on track for that. Depends on how much you expect this quarter. So I don't know, but I think it will be a big quarter. My concern more is like going forward. I mean, Jose Pontes talks about it all the time. It's at a natural limit with the Model Y. Like, it's already selling so far above sales in that price category. It's above vehicles that sell in much higher volumes, whose classes sell in much higher volumes, vehicle classes. So it's like number one. The Model Y is number one in so many markets, and I just feel nervous that can't last. Like, it's too expensive a vehicle up front for it to sell that much, and like at some point the available buyers, this is what Elon talks about, like there's only so much you can do with the upfront purchase price being what it is. That's what he's talked about a few quarters recently. And there's only so much you can do with interest rates, and interest rates hit higher upfront purchase price vehicles more than lower upfront purchase price vehicles. And so there's like a limit. Like, there's only so many people who can afford to buy a Tesla Model Y. And I'm not sure how much that market is already getting saturated in a bunch of countries.
Are you implying that there might not be infinite demand for these vehicles?
Yeah, I'm not sure what I feel nervous about Tesla's growth rate in 2024. Like,
Well,
I don't
here's
see
the
it
thing.
getting, I don't see it, like, I don't see big growth coming.
No, I think that this idea that it's going to continue, and I've had it in the comments. There have been people in the comments recently in the last 60 days that say Tesla grows 50% every year. I'm like, dude, that is not what's going to happen here. But hey, maybe they'll deliver 250,000. I can't say it.
I will
Maybe
say there
those
was
10
one.
Cybertruck deliveries will push them over the edge.
Well, there was one comment that when in a Sandy Munro interview with Elon Musk, where Sandy was trying to get an estimate on when, stuff about the cheaper Tesla, the Model C, we'll call it. And Elon's like, oh, I can't make comments because it affects its material information and it could affect the stock price. But then he made one comment in there where he said something about he's reviewing the production lines for the Model 3 every week. I mean, not the Model 3, for the cheaper model. To me, if he's reviewing the production line every week, like, they're getting closer, like significantly closer to producing this cheaper Tesla. They can't say anything about it because of stock reasons. I'm curious if it won't come sooner than a lot of people are expecting. And once that comes, then you can expect massive growth again. I think the Cybertruck, I don't think it's going to deliver it. I think nobody's expecting. I mean, nobody really is expecting that. But with this,
I just have to ask this question. You really think that a company that has been crowing about an electric semi truck for coming on 7 years, in 2 weeks it'll be 7 years, with no real commercial customers driving it, who has shown off and sold and collected money on a Tesla Roadster, again, 6-7 years ago, that they have delivered 0 of them, who has showed a Cybertruck, presumably in its final form, for more than 4 years and has only delivered 10, and those 10 it delivered 2.5 years late, that talks about robots with their fake Optimus nonsense. You're telling me that a company that thrives on hype and showing everybody the future has somehow kept this thing under wraps for years and years of development? Absolutely not. I give that zero possibility.
No, they've always kept them under wraps well until they keep it within a small circle. And they've
but there's no way
before
that
the
they're
reveal
building
event.
out. Yeah, but there's no way that they're building out a production line. There's no way that they have this thing designed and it's ready. No, and again, I'm fine going on the record and being wrong, but I think
he's focused pretty well at just narrowing down on the vehicles that the company relies on to grow. And the Semi, the Cybertruck are sort of side stories for him, I think. I mean, the Semi is my favorite model, but that's one reason why Jerome Guillen left, I think, is because he got frustrated with how much the Semi was delayed. That was his project. And
Yeah.
I saw him, anyway. But with the cheaper model, I think Elon realized about a year ago, like they really need they can't have 50% growth a year without robotaxi capability or a cheaper model that more people can access, can buy. So I think they're serious about doing it, and I think it's simple enough, that potentially simple enough, that they can get a lot of work done. And then I'm expecting end of 2024 it's revealed, and is not far off from that to production. But 2024 itself, I think, is going to be a painful year for Tesla. And well, the last thing we have other stories we're going to skip because late, but the thing I was going to mention earlier that I forgot was in that interview also, Sandy Munro mentioned that Jim Farley has has contacted him, be like, hey, when are you going to, put out a report on a teardown of the Cybertruck? Like the way Sandy said it was like Jim Farley's eager to see their teardown of the Cybertruck. And what that one thing that told me was like, they're paying a lot of attention. They care a lot. They think they're competing with the Cybertruck quite a bit, and they are. I think again, the disappointment in the pricing and range of the Cybertruck, which was even present among a lot of Tesla fans, like super fans, I think is something that's going to hearten Jim Farley a bit and Ford a bit, and give them the faith that they can get a lot more Lightning sales, and that maybe the concerns about the Cybertruck were bigger than they needed to be. But I mean, but on the other hand, Cybertruck obviously more powerful, has other capabilities. So I don't, the steer by wire, all that stuff. So it's I don't know, but I think what it tells is that Jim Farley sees the Tesla as a competitor, and I think a lot of people, do and are, might be open to buying a Lightning in 2024.
I think that's true. I would have taken Jim Farley's comment about when are you going to tear down a Cybertruck as a trolling bit, but yeah, maybe they're concerned. Who knows?
Well, that's interesting. That's another interesting
like
way you could look at it.
Oh yeah, like, hey, you tore down a Lightning. Why don't you tear down this? Freaking.
Yeah, and we're not going to talk about this. I talked about there's basically two very different ways I could see Cybertruck's future going. We could talk about it another time maybe, but we talked about it.
Yeah, we've said it before. It's either going to be huge or it's not.
Do you want to say anything about Volvo ChargePoint Starbucks, or we can skip this?
I'll skip it.
And the last one, this is, I guess, the biggest Tesla recall ever, a recall of 2 million U.S. vehicles, because the NHTSA decided that their Tesla's not as clear as it needs to be with the risks of relying on autopilot, and I don't know. I mean, it's not a big deal I mean, sort of expected it, and it's just a software update. They're just going to roll out a software update, so it's not like you have to take your car into the Tesla service center. So I don't know. I don't see it as a huge deal, but it's a win in the cap of people who don't like Tesla's communications. And as a driver, I'm really annoyed by I know I get the warnings so much. I'm like, I get it. I need to pay attention. I don't need more warnings. I don't think anyone really needs more warnings. It's either in their brain that they can trust it, or it's not. And I don't think extra warnings and safeguards like that are going to really matter, but we'll see what they roll out. I don't know.
Yeah, I personally don't like it. I think a lot of people use it in a way that is very much not the quote unquote intended purpose, depending on who you believe. So I think anything that makes that feature more annoying to use is going to be good for the other non-Tesla people on the road.
The lane keeping works well. The
Sure.
changing works well, better than a lot
But
of
that's the
people.
problem, right? It lulls
But-
you into this sense of security because it does work so well
Yeah.
that you're looking down at your phone and then you look up and you're underneath a fire truck.
Yeah, but that's the case for driver assist features across the board, and we'll talk about that another time.
100%.
NASA research.
Actually,
on
that might be a good standalone clean tech talk show. We'll get Philip Koopman on here. We'll get a couple of the guys from like the Autonomy Institute on here, and we'll have a good conversation about whether or not these things are ready for prime time.
Yeah, but that's definitely our show for today. Thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you, Joe.
Peace.